Welcome to the debate. Imagine showing up to a 130-lap fight knowing that, well, for every single corner, only 2/3 of your right front tires actually touching the asphalt.
It is an absolute nightmare.
It really is. That is the brutal mathematical reality of Darlington Raceway. You're strapping into a Gen 3 supercar, locking in that aggressive fixed setup camber, and essentially cornering on a prayer and the inner edge of your rubber.
And that inner edge gets completely punished. You're throwing, 1,500 kilograms of V8 muscle into turns 1 and 2, and that tire is just screaming for mercy. It's the ultimate motorsport paradox, really.
Exactly. And, to the grid listening out there right now as you prep your helmets, we know you already understand the physics of an oval. You know exactly what weight transfer feels like.
Right, we aren't here to give you a rookie briefing.
No, definitely not. We are delivering a specialized pre-race commentators analysis to dissect exactly how this 130-lap OzOval V8 Supercar Series race is going to unfold tonight. We are here to debate the winning race strategy. Who has the discipline to conquer the track, and who is going to earn a Darlington stripe and, an early shower?
The stakes couldn't be higher. Darlington is notoriously abrasive. It's narrow, and it simply does not care about what your perfect Motec data look like in practice.
It really doesn't.
Once the green flag drops, the track conditions change, the dirty air completely shifts the aero balance of these cars, and the suspense just builds. Are we going to see a strategic masterclass tonight, or are these 600 horsepower V8s going to tear each other apart?
Which brings us to the core disagreement we're tackling today. Emerging straight from the Team Rogue telemetry data, the GHOST protocol. Is the only true path to victory a hyper-conservative, stealthy, tire-saving strategy?
Or does the inherently chaotic, abrasive nature of Darlington actually demand calculated aggression and track position, just to avoid the wrecks at the back?
Right. Well, representing the data, I will be arguing for the extreme discipline of the GHOST protocol. I believe that strict rationing of your 3 spare sets of tires, agonizing patience, and smooth inputs they are the only ways to survive and win.
And I am taking the exact opposite stance. I am representing the aggressive track position strategy. Because, look, hiding at the back of a restless pack of supercars isn't strategy. It's a recipe for getting caught in someone else's mess. The true champions of this series aren't going to cower in 20th place. They will push the pace from the front, dictate the race flow, and use tactical aggression to claim victory.
I hear you, but look at the reality of that approach. If a driver spends 100 laps hiding at the back of the pack just to survive, you might argue they aren't racing. But if they push early, are they doing anything other than hoping everyone else's engine starves on lap 41?
Well, they are dictating the pace.
But the telemetry facts from testing are absolutely brutal, and we need to talk about the ghost edge. The fixed setup locks in that aggressive camber, meaning the outside of the tire is essentially a ghost. The wear data after a 40-lap run is staggering.
It is pretty severe.
It is. 24% remaining on the inner edge, 26% in the middle, and 93% remaining on the outer edge. You are fundamentally cooking the inside of that tire.
I don't dispute the wear numbers. The inner edge takes an absolute beating. But the interpretation of how to manage that wear is where the GHOST protocol completely loses me.
But the math of the GHOST protocol is undeniable. We all know the fuel window is a hard 40 laps. We've seen the 1.67-liter baseline burn rate.
Yeah, it's a hard cutoff.
Exactly. If you try to stretch it and cross the line to start lap 41, your engine completely starves. Therefore, the GHOST protocol dictates that laps 1 through 100 must be pure survival. You sit at the rear, you use the draft.
Sitting duck, you mean?
No, you heavily employ lift and coast to extend that fuel window. And whenever a safety car comes out in the first half of the race, you pit for fuel only. You protect those 3 spare sets of tires with your life. You do not waste them trying to defend 12th place on lap 45.
Right, you just hoard them.
Then, on lap 100, you bolt on your final set of sticker tires for the straight 30-lap sprint through a field of competitors driving on dead rubber. Drivers like Todd Maxfield, noted as incredibly clean and patient, or Ruben Phelps, who has successfully avoided the big incidents all season. They are the perfect candidates to execute this to perfection.
Okay,
That spreadsheet logic looks fantastic in a perfectly sterile testing environment, but the Ghost protocol fundamentally fails the moment you introduce it to a living, breathing field of V8 supercars.
How so? It relies on them making mistakes.
Because hiding at the back of the pack means you're subjecting your car to dirty air for 100 straight laps. We know how much these Gen 3 Camaros and Mustangs rely on front downforce. When you sit in the turbulent wake of 15 other cars, you lose the aerodynamic grip on the nose.
Which means you have to back off the pace. That's the point.
No, it means when you turn the wheel, the car literally doesn't respond. So you put more mechanical steering input into the car to compensate for the lack of aero. And what does forcing the steering do?
Well, it wears the tire.
It acts like a cheese grater on that exact same critical right front tire you're supposedly trying to save. Furthermore, when you sit at the back, you surrender your destiny to the cars in front of you.
You have plenty of warning if you leave a gap.
Not at Darlington. When someone blows a motor up front or serves up a little bit of karma and spins off turn 2, you have nowhere to go. The track is too narrow. You get collected, your radiator is smashed, and suddenly, stick a fork in him, he's done.
You're framing track position as safety, but juggling track position while trying to save a highly cambered tire Darlington is like trying to ice skate on gravel. It is a catastrophic balancing act. Track position demands you burn your equipment early.
Actually, the telemetry supports the aggression. I'm looking at the pace drop-off data from your own sheet. Over an entire 40-lap stint, the pace loss is only about 1.3 seconds.
But that is overall pace, not front grip.
Hear me out. The peak lap is a 31.2, and the end of stint pace is a 32.5. That is an outstanding level of consistency for a tire that is supposedly dying. And look at the right rear tire wear, 64% remaining after 40 laps. That validates that if you have excellent throttle control, you can absolutely push the pace and drive the car off the rear.
Wait, hold on.
You have to maintain track position and force the issue. Defending season champion Gary Wellman or a multiple-time champ like Craig Roffey have the raw pace and the veteran experience to dictate the race from the front. They aren't going to cower at the back hoping for a miracle caution.
The thing I keep getting stuck on with that argument is the handling evolution. Yes, the right rear has 64% left, but what happens to the front?
You compensate.
The telemetry explicitly warns us. The moment that right front tire degrades past 30% remaining, the car develops terminal understeer. It's a brutal combination of aero wash and mechanical push. The rear stays planted, which completely explains your 64% right rear stat, but the front will constantly want to wash up into the outside wall in turns 2 and 4.
Exactly. The rear is planted, so you use it.
But relying on rear grip when the front is completely washed out is like trying to steer a missile from the back. You're carrying speed, but you have no say in where it lands. No amount of champion's grit, no amount of veteran experience from Wellman or Roffey will stop a fundamentally understeering 1,500-kilogram supercar from smacking the Darlington stripe once that front tire gives up.
Come on, you really think guys like Wellman and Roffey just sit there and let the car wash up into the wall? Champion drivers anticipate that terminal push. They alter their braking points, they change their lines, they use the throttle to rotate the car specifically because they know the rear has the grip to handle it.
They can't defy physics.
By maintaining clean air out front, the nose of the car actually works, which inherently saves the right front tire longer than the guy stuck in the back. Clean air is the ultimate tire-saving strategy.
But that terminal understeer doesn't happen in a vacuum. It happens to specific driving styles. Let's look at the grid, because this is where the theory hits the asphalt. Point of contention number 1, who is going to struggle today? The tire burners versus the passive strategists?
You're going to bring up Peter Madsen, aren't you?
Yes. When I look at the driver notes, it spells absolute disaster for the aggressive guys. Take Peter Madsen. He is explicitly noted in the paddock as a tire burner. Or look at Tyson Carey. He is highly aggressive even if he does show up to the virtual grid in his famous rubber ducky PJs.
Carey has been stepping up his game, though.
He has, but aggressive steering and throttle inputs at Darlington are a death sentence. When drivers like Madsen or Carey hit this track and try to force the issue, they are going to instantly fry that inner 24% of the right front tire. It won't take 40 laps to hit terminal understeer, it will take 20. And when that tire gives up early, they're going straight into the turn 2 wall. The aggressive strategy is completely self-eliminating here.
I hear you. And yes, Madsen and Carey run a massive risk if they don't modulate their aggression. But I flipped the script entirely. The overly passive drivers are going to struggle just as much, if not more, tonight.
Who do you mean?
Let's look at Matthew Raymond and Perry Anasakis. Both are noted in the paddock as highly strategic drivers, but they are also explicitly labeled as passive. Being passive at Darlington doesn't mean you survive, it means you get swallowed.
Swallowed by what? The guys crashing into the wall?
Swallowed by the aerodynamic reality of the pack. If you are constantly lifting and coasting, giving up track position just to protect the tire, you are going to find yourself trapped behind lap traffic, boxed in on restarts, and constantly fighting that dirty air we talked about.
Passive kid for saving tires?
You are chewing up your front tires in the turbulent wake of 14 other cars while running 2 seconds off the pace. When lap 100 rolls around and it's time for that vaunted 30-lap strike, passive drivers like Anastasiakis will be too far buried in the field to catch the leaders. They'll bolt on sticker tires just to finish 12th.
That's a fascinating way to look at it, but let me give you a different perspective. If Peter Madsen or Tyson Carey push the pace early and force the issue, aren't they just doing the strategic drivers a massive favor?
How is destroying the field a favor?
By pushing the tempo, the aggressive drivers are burning themselves out of the race. They hit that terminal understeer early, bounce off the wall, and cause the exact cautions that the Ghost Protocol relies on. A passive driver like Raymond isn't getting swallowed. He is letting the aggressive drivers clear the path by eliminating themselves, setting up a free fuel-only pit stop to reset the 40-lap window.
You're assuming the aggressive drivers will inherently crash instead of checking out. If an aggressive driver manages to build a 3-second gap out front, they get the clean air. And that brings us to the real wild cards of the grid, the hard racers and the drivers who seem to manifest their own luck. You talk about the mathematical certainty of the Ghost Protocol, but you can't calculate chaos.
You mean guys trying to force passes? Because getting clean air requires getting around people. Look at Giuseppe Maiolo. He's known as a hard racer, sometimes a bit too hard.
He is definitely aggressive.
Exactly. If he tries to implement your aggressive track position strategy, he's going to have to force passes in the first 50 laps. And at Darlington, if you try to force a pass on the outside, you are asking for a one-way ticket to the fence. The track is too narrow, the aero wash from the car on the inside will push you up, and the marbles on the outside lane will grab the car. Darlington physically punishes hard racers who try to impose their will on the track rather than listening to what the tire allows.
That is exactly what breaks your rigid Ghost Protocol, though, the unpredictability. Let's look at Ryan and Barber. The notes on Ryan are absolutely fascinating. He is quick, but finds trouble. Yet he is finding some luck in this season.
Oh boy.
This is a guy who is known for occasionally driving with his knees while yelling "ban, banned" on the radio. He is absolute chaos in a race car, but he has raw, unadulterated speed. Drivers like Ryan, who balance that chaotic pace with a bit of newfound luck, are the exact profile of someone who can completely dismantle a math-based strategy.
How does chaos dismantle the math if the math dictates the fuel window?
Because he stretches the field. If a driver like Ryan gets out front and builds an insurmountable lead while everyone else is playing a 100-lap waiting game, the model breaks. If he is 15 seconds up the road by lap 90, it doesn't matter if you bolt on sticker tires for the final 30 laps. You won't catch him. He forces the strategic drivers to abandon their lifting coaster early just to stay on the lead lap, which ruins their fuel numbers.
You cannot rely to luck over 130 laps at Darlington. Luck runs out the exact moment that right front drops below 30%. You can drive with your knees for 5 laps, but you can't do it when the mechanical grip vanishes and the aero push takes over.
But he forces the issue.
And the drivers who rely on forcing the issue, even if they build a gap, will eventually find themselves having to pit off-cycle because their tires are completely destroyed. And the moment you pit off-cycle, you are out of sync with the safety cars, your fuel window is heavily compromised, and the Ghost Protocol drivers will seamlessly cycle past you while they just take on fuel.
But you are acting like the Ghost Protocol drivers exist in a vacuum, completely immune to the chaos happening around them. What happens when a hard racer like Maiolo or a chaotic element like Ryan M. Barber gets loose right in front of your strategic, clean drivers like Todd Maxfield or Ruben Phelps?
That is precisely why the Ghost Protocol dictates running at the rear of the pack, not the middle. You leave a buffer.
A buffer isn't a force field. The Ghost Protocol demands you sit in the pack. The pack is where the danger is concentrated. I guarantee you, when someone blows a motor or gets sideways off turn 2, the passive drivers who are clustered together playing a fuel-saving game are going to get collected. You can't execute a brilliant 30-lap strike if your suspension is bent on lap 60.
You let the Maiolos and the Barbers fight it out for 10th place, while you sit safely in 20th, managing your fuel, coasting into the corners, and keeping your car pristine. And this sets up perfectly for how I see this race ending. Let's talk podium predictions and bold dark horses so the drivers listening have some bulletin board material.
Oh, I can't wait to hear how clinical and sterile this podium is going to be.
Based strictly on the telemetry, the tire wear reality, and the psychological profiles of the grid, I predict a podium entirely dominated by the smooth operators. My pick for the win is Ruben Phelps.
Predictable.
The data backs this up flawlessly. He has already capitalized on a massive 2-for-2 start to the season, winning at Daytona and Charlotte. He is incredibly quick, but more importantly, he has demonstrated an exceptional ability to avoid big incidents this season. Winning at restrictor plate tracks requires immense patience and draft management skills that directly translate to lift and coast fuel saving at Darlington. He will sit back, manage that right front tire perfectly, hit his fuel numbers without panicking, and strike at the end.
And for second place, another spreadsheet driver.
Todd Maxfield, clean, patient, methodical. He will perfectly execute the lift and coast strategy to stretch the fuel window and follow Phelps through the field on sticker tires. And for my dark horse, I am throwing out Barry Neal. He is quick and highly strategic. He will fly under the radar for 100 laps and surprise everyone by executing the final 30-lap strike. While the aggressive drivers are fighting terminal understeer and screaming at their spotters, Neal is going to slice through the field on fresh rubber.
A very clean, very logical prediction that completely ignores the reality of V8 supercar racing. I completely disagree. I predict the aggressive veterans will absolutely take this race by the scruff of the neck.
Let's hear it then.
For the win, I am picking Gary Wellman. He is a defending season champion for a very specific reason. He knows how to manipulate a race. He is going to remind everyone on this grid why he holds that title. He has the raw pace, the racecraft, and the aggression to dictate the race from the front, manage his track position in clean air, and hold off the pack.
Even on 40-lap-old tires?
Especially on 40-lap-old tires, because he'll be driving off the rear. For second, I'm taking Craig Ruffy, a multiple-time champion who knows how to survive the dirty air by simply staying ahead of it. He will use his veteran experience to manage his rear tires and rotate the car when the front inevitably starts to push. And my bold dark horse, I am predicting Giuseppe Maiolo.
Maiolo? Really? Picking Maiolo at Darlington is like bringing a sledgehammer to a lock-picking contest. Sure, it might eventually open the door, but it's going to make a massive mess, and you're probably going to break the hinges in the process.
Exactly. Sometimes you just need to smash the lock. If Maiolo can channel his hard racing mentality into elite throttle control, his right rear tire management will carry him to the podium. If he can use the rear of the car to deter a vehicle rather than relying solely on the steering wheel and that compromised right front, he bypasses the terminal understeer problem entirely. He is exactly the kind of disruptive force that can shatter your Ghost Protocol. He won't wait for lap 100 to strike. He'll strike on lap 10 and challenge the entire field to catch him.
It is a massive leap of faith to ask a notoriously hard racer to suddenly develop elite, delicate throttle control for 130 laps on one of the most abrasive surfaces we race on. One slip of the right foot, one overly aggressive corner entry, and the rear steps out, snapping the front right into the wall.
That's the risk you take for glory.
But honestly, that is exactly why we are debating this and why the grid is tuning in right now. As we wrap up this pre-race analysis, it is clear we stand on very different sides of the strategic divide. I firmly believe that extreme discipline, the mathematical certainty of the Ghost Protocol, and patient drivers like Phelps and Maxfield will ultimately conquer Darlington. The data is literally written into the wear patterns of the tires, and ignoring it is perilous.
And I maintain that the telemetry is a guide, not a religion. The chaos of a 600 horsepower V8 pack race requires calculated aggression. Champions like Wellman and Roffey will use track position, clean air, and raw pace to dictate the race, proving that you can't win a dogfight by hiding in the clouds for 100 laps hoping everyone else runs out of ammo.
Yet for all our disagreement on how to attack this track, there is a shared reality that every single driver on the grid must respect today. First, the brutal 40-lap fuel starvation limit. It is a hard physical boundary. We all know the math.
Right. Lap 41 is a guaranteed engine stall.
You miss your pit entry, or you push too hard in the draft without saving, and your race is over. Second, the absolute necessity of protecting those 3 spare sets of tires.
Absolutely. Whether you use those 3 sets aggressively to maintain clean air at the front, or you hoard them for a late race strike, wasting them under an early caution because you flat-spotted a tire trying to defend 15th place is a guaranteed loss.
The telemetry data provides a perfect clinical script for how this race should theoretically run. It tells you when to pit, when to lift, and when the tire will fail.
But human emotion, the pressure of a championship battle, the turbulence of the dirty air, and the sheer unadulterated chaos of the OzOval V8 Superkart series will ultimately tear that script to shreds. We invite all the drivers listening to take these perspectives onto the track. It is entirely up to you, the grid, to settle this debate on the asphalt.
Because at the end of the day, no matter how precisely you engineer your strategy, once you drop the green flag at Darlington, that pristine data machine shatters. Welcome to the muddy waters. Good luck out there tonight.